Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Keith McKeever, the host of the Battle Buddy Podcast, and back with another episode. And I will go ahead and let my awesome guest introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. How you doing? I'm Niurka Castaneda. How you? And thank you very much for having me on your show.
No problem. I'm excited to have you here because we've gotten to know you, or I've gotten to know you, quite a bit over the last couple of months through the Warrior Council. So I'm excited to have another chat with you. We chat like once a week for a couple hours, but this is awesome to kind of have a one-on-one thing here and kind of talk about some things that, our paths are fairly similar when it comes to entrepreneurship and real estate, stuff like that. So go ahead and, tell us what your story is. Where were you born and raised, and what's your military journey, and what got you to the point where you're at today?
Well, I'm Cuban. I was born and raised in Cuba until I was 18. And then I flew over. I didn't get in the boat. I flew over the legal way. And a year later, I joined the Army. It was the best decision of my life because it took me completely, it showed me the world. And, I love the culture. I love the lifestyle. No, everything was easy. But it really, I spent more time there than I spent on my on Cuba. I traveled all over the world. I got to see a lot of different cultures. I got to meet wonderful people. And then it was over. It was time to
It
get out.
broadens a lot of horizons, doesn't it? It can show you so much just serving.
Yes. It was an eye-opening, especially, and you see the difference when you come back, when you get back into civilian life. Everybody stay where they were. They still have the 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 mentality of the mind frame of the life, right? Or what they're surrounded with, the issues, the problems. Where when you've been to so many places and you've seen so many different things, and you had a chance to see other cultures, other worlds, um, it's shocking. It's very shocking, and sometimes it's very difficult to transition. And they still look at you like when you left. They don't look at you like you know you spent all this stuff, you did all this stuff. No, they look at you like, yes, you're still the same teenager that you were when you left. Right?
I always wondered if that was just because for them, things change, but not as much as they change for you.
Right.
So like they're kind of still living in a bubble, and I never really thought about it like that until you just put it that everybody does kind of look at you like you're the same old person, and in your mind you're like, I'm not. I've grown. I've experienced. I've seen these things, done these things, whatever. I've met all these interesting other people in the world and seen how other things work, and I'm not the same person. And it makes it difficult, to kind of readjust.
Yeah, it make it difficult. And even if you're not an organized person, when you have to live in a military lifestyle, you had a structure. Like, I'm not organized at all, but I have a schedule. I have a structure of how I do things, and I get things accomplished in a day that a normal person would take maybe a week or a month to get done.
I know you have a lot on your plate, so I know you've got to. That's one of those other similarities between the two of us. I think it's common thread on veterans that are entrepreneurs.
And that's one of the things that sometimes I guess what you call the normal people look at you like you had two heads, and they keep telling you slow down, slow down. I'm like, don't tell me to slow down. You need to speed up.
Yeah, I got stuff to do, man. I got a plan. I got stuff to execute here.
Yeah, And everybody's priority is different. There's nothing wrong with, being laid back and just live your life on at your own pace. But you know, if my if I take 3 or 5 steps more than you, there's nothing wrong with that neither.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes you happy, and you're working towards your goal. Because I literally just had this conversation with my son last night about success. I said, don't let other people choose what your success is. You choose what your success is. What kind of life do you want to live? What kind of legacy do you want to live? Like, don't you know? Don't let other people influence that. It's you. So if you want to pursue a certain passion or pursue a certain goal, then do it. How much money you want to make in a year, that's up to you. Whatever makes you happy, whether that's trying to make $1 million a year or if you're going to try and live off 5,000 a year, like whatever makes you happy. you know I mean, don't let people try and tell you what your success is. So I think that's interesting when people try and tell you to slow down or whatever, like you're doing too much. Like, no, I'm doing what I want to do because it's my goal, it's my mission, it's what I'm working towards, it's my success that I'm working towards, not what your vision of my success should be.
And yes, and it's you know, um, you were in the military. I had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. By 6 o'clock, I was running like 2 miles, and then we had to go on formation. We had to do all this stuff, and you were done in a normal day, like maybe 5, and you still have a lot of other stuff to do. Your day didn't stop, and the next day you would do it again, and you would do it, and you will make sure that everything got done, everything had a time, a schedule, and I was a single parent in the military. That's not easy. I had 2 kids to take care of while doing 8, 10, 12 hours working in the military. I'm no superhero, but I managed. And there were,
And hats off to you for doing that because I cannot imagine.
yeah,
I do a lot of people that were single parents or they were in a single parent role because the other spouse was deployed. They're just the nightmares logistically of getting the kids to the on base uh, preschool babysitting thing, whatever that they had. Just like the logistics of picking up their kid, who's watching them, who's doing what their duty days are. I mean, it was a nightmare. I had troops, other people in my unit that were like that they were always kind of constantly trying to juggle all that. And I was single for most of my time in, and I'm like, that's just insane what you're trying to juggle. So hats off to you for being able to to find a way, use the resources, and get her done.
thank you. And it does get easier. Well, it doesn't get easier. It gets manageable the more that you do it,
You find your
right?
groove a little bit. You find what works for you.
You find what to prioritize, and that's the key. What to prioritize, not during your whole life, but during your day. What's important, what's not important. I don't stress out about the little things. If they don't, if they don't change what I'm trying to do, let it go. Now, if they affect what I'm trying to do, yes, I will find a solution. I don't waste time complaining. Sometimes others do that, and yeah, it's just a waste of energy. It's all about where you're putting your energy, right? It,
There, there is a
we all
lot of
have,
negativity in the world. That's for sure.
yes, and sometimes we need that reboot. That's what I do. That's one of the reasons I decided to post a couple pictures every day that make me laugh and hopefully make other people laugh at least for 5 minutes. Because I think we all need that mind frame, right? We need to find the positive, even if it's just one smile, because life gets heavy. Um, but it make it a little bit more manageable.
Well, it's
And
probably really important right now. I mean, especially with everything that's going on in the world. Not to get into all that, but there's a lot of stuff going on today, and social media is what maybe a lot of people have. So, posting something that takes somebody's mind down a different path or puts a smile on their face is a good thing. We could
yeah,
all use a little bit more of that every day.
it's just a small thing, but it works. Um, so hopefully help somebody but that's all it is. And transitioning from the military is always difficult because you left at 18. You left when you did 20 years. That's what, 45 in the 40s. um
Yeah, most people are going to be out probably by 45, if not 50, depending
right.
on how long they serve.
So you just live um
Yeah.
a whole life, and now you have to learn how to live again.
The beauty of it, though, is that you have a whole nother life. I literally told a guy this yesterday. I'm like, by the time you get out, you're going to have another 20 to 25 years until that typical retirement age of 65. That's a whole nother career. You have a whole nother life ahead of you. And then you've got retirement. And then that's a whole nother life in its own. So you've only lived a small portion of your life if you're lucky. So, make the best of it. Get your education, get yourself ready, get yourself a plan, and go attack it and have fun. Do something you enjoy.
And that's my thing. Like, once you transition, you have to find a new purpose. You have to find something that matters to you. um I believe in entrepreneurship. I kind of fell into it. I transitioned to, like most military do. I went and got my year bill, got my education, because it was the first time I was in a place long enough to get my degree. So I got two. Because it was the same amount of time to get two than get one. So I got that, and then I transitioned on entrepreneurship. But the reason is, what I was doing on my studying. The only way for me to stay still and care about what studying, I needed to put it into practice. And that's how I started uh, entrepreneurship. My time, my my pace. You know, I didn't went out and did everything that I needed to do because I had to prioritize my studies. Right? I had to spend time studying, and you're studying. You don't spend 8 hours. You spend 15. So the only way I can do both was by making sure that everything I was studying, it relate to my business. So I will focus everything on my business, and it just get me ahead.
That's a great way of looking at it, especially if you're in business. Because
Yeah.
as you know, I'm going for my bachelor's degree in business administration right now, and taking marketing classes and stuff like that, and economics, whatever. There's a lot of moments where a term comes up, and maybe you didn't really know what that term was before or something, or it just hits you totally different, as if instead of like if you were an 18, 19-year-old college student, and now you can see it, like it's in front of you. You've seen it in your business, you've done it in your business. Maybe you didn't have the label for it, but now you know it, now you understand it, and it just kind of clicks. So
And
I
I
can totally
believe,
see that.
yeah, and I believe that's the missing piece. There's a lot of theory, um, and a lot of people complain. Okay, I get a degree, I didn't learn nothing until I went to the real life. But it's not that they didn't learn anything; it doesn't apply it the right way. And it's not everything you need to learn, because you always have to build up. You always have to gain new skills and find new information. Um, so, but there's has to be 50-50. I believe you have to put it into practice, and don't think that you're going to make a $1 million business in 5 days. That doesn't happen unless you're really lucky.
The
And
odds of
even
that are just like hitting the lottery, right?
yeah, and even if you get that lucky, how are you going to handle it? You don't even barely took time to learn how to handle $5 million.
Well,
You
not
know,
only that, you haven't had the ups and downs of the whole road, and the journeys is all part of it.
yeah.
Is learning and adapting, and figuring out what works and doesn't work, and the networking and getting to know people. Like that's all part of the journey.
I actually did. I consulted a real company, millions of dollar company, and I went. They had some issues. I went there. Yeah, they were making about $5 million. They were probably losing about 10 millions because they didn't have the fundamental was inventory. They didn't know what they had in inventory. They were out of stock, or the most valuable part that they make the most money, or the components, because they didn't have that down. They were spending money. They were making money. They didn't were making as much as they could have.
With that much revenue, they had probably hit a spot where they felt comfortable that their systems were in place and they were working, and they probably let their guard down a little bit. Would you say that's probably accurate
They had a
to
lot of
some degree?
issues. They had a lot of issues. The main one is they didn't look at inventory, and that's a lot of business um don't do. They don't look at inventory as money, but you have to look at it as money because it's money that you spend on it. It's money that it can generate profit. It's money that can go down the rabbit hole if it spoils, depending on what kind of inventory you have, and if it's mismanaged or pilfer, um, you're going to lose money either way. Um, but also one main ingredient that they had is they had employers, but they weren't training their employers the right way, and that's key, especially coming from the military. That's all we do. We train. We train. We get missions that you think that are impossible, and we make it happen. But because before you go to that mission, you train. You figure out. You got a SOP. You got a plan.
Yeah, so it becomes second nature, and it's just totally ingrained in your head. Exactly what you need to do. You don't have to think about it. You
Yeah.
just act and react.
And I believe that's my personal um, opinion is you need to run your business the same way. You need to build all those foundations, and not all money is green. Yes, the money that's coming in is green, but inventory is key. Um, Finding everything that you can make the instead of paying your taxes, finding ways that you can deduct as much as possible. Without doing anything crazy, just doing what's legally allowed and getting that education to be able to do that in the first place. That's primary. That's part of having a business.
Yeah, and if you don't know that stuff, find somebody. Hire that tax professional or that accountant, both, and get them in there. Because I was to say, that's the other vital part on top of inventory is just the finances.
Yeah,
Know
you
what
need
you're
to,
spending, know your numbers, know your key performance indicators, and all that stuff. Like you just got to know that stuff.
but you need to be able to have the systems and process in place. Because if you just go and hire somebody and you have to spend most of your time managing them because they don't have a clear understanding of what you want them to get done, then it's a waste of money and it's a waste of time. So if you hire somebody, you need to make sure you have clear instructions. You need to have all that systems in place so they just come and do the job, and you only delegating the task. You're not delegating the responsibility. You still have the responsibility of making sure they're doing it the right way, because nobody's going to do it the same way that you can. It's not going to be as perfect or as imperfect as you can make it. Um, but it's still your business, so you need to be responsible for it. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that getting
Oh
paid.
yeah, but I think it's really hard for some people to do. I mean, I'm myself included, just giving up control on things and just letting somebody else do something.
What
To either delegate or to hire somebody and have them run a task when to not have that control, that kind of hurts a little bit sometimes.
well,
But it's something everybody has to get past.
you start with what you don't like to do. That's what
Then
you
you're gonna
start.
find the person that fits what you want, done, or what tasks you want done. You got to find that person that fits it right. Which in
Well,
many cases may not be somebody exactly like you. It's got to be somebody opposite.
no,
In some
you
cases.
you want to make sure you find a second you, and I don't mean same personality, same everything. It being somebody that can get that job as good as you. So in order to have that in place, you need to have trust. You need to have checks. Make sure you have assessments in place. So when you put a one person to replace your job, doesn't mean that you're going to have more time to focus on other projects. But no, you have to constantly come back and correct whatever they're doing. Okay, they need to have the skills. They need to be trainable, because even if you don't have the skills, but you're trainable, you can learn.
Yeah, and just about anybody can learn.
No, everybody can learn. Most people
You
can.
know, the right
You need to have the right time
right
frame.
way. Yeah.
You need to have the right time frame and the right mind frame. Um. So, but you need to have the systems in place. I believe that's my personal opinion anyway. Um, because it's my money. I don't want to waste it, because I can use that same money to grow another project, or to make sure that my business keep growing.
Yeah, you
So
never know where that couple $1,000 that could be wasted. You know, if you save that by doing the right things and having the right processes and people, if you're wasting that money, you've wasted it. But if you didn't waste it, who knows what that money could have been invested in another business, stocks, whatever, you know, and who knows what that, say, $5,000 could have turned into 10 years down the road. Could have turned into a multi-million-dollar business, or, you know, whatever. So every penny counts. That's always been my thought.
especially in the beginning, because you never know, and if COVID has teaches anything, 3 months is not enough anymore. You need to at
No,
least have
definitely
six
not.
months to a year. Now we're going to go in the second year. Um, so you need to have a buffer. There's always has emergency fund that you need to have.
I think
Uh,
COVID has taught businesses that are listening or pay attention anyway. Those things that you never thought you'd have to plan for, maybe you should have a plan for it now. And it's sad to say, but I mean, whatever your mind can come up with that you might need a plan for, you might want to try and come up with a plan for it. Because if we've seen anything in the last couple of years, just about anything seems to be possible. Nobody would ever expect the global pandemic and businesses shutting down and not being able to eat in restaurants. And for people who weren't prepared, or businesses who weren't prepared, they're done. And it's a shame. On the flip side, it also creates opportunity for people to come in and, you know, new entrepreneurs to come in and take over those restaurants or those companies, you know, that failed to adapt or failed to prepare. So
um, cows always bring opportunity. That's the basics of it. And what I say, and one thing I wanted to mention is, when I say build your team, um, there's tasks that you can delegate, that you can include people closest to you. You know, I delegate tasks to my kids. I delegate tasks to my family. They don't do everything, of course. And I compensate it in return. It's not free labor. I don't believe in free labor.
yeah,
Um,
you're putting a roof over their head, right?
but
That's what I always got. Cause I don't know if you knew it. I grew up in around the real estate industry, so I went to put out a few signs when I was a kid, and my kids will sure do it. And I was always told, "Well, I put food in your stomach and a roof over your head, don't I? So here's $5 in gas money. Go put these signs out."
no, you know, I like, especially my kids. My main idea is stuff that I can do. Um, they probably can do better because they're better in technology than I am. That's always the case for kids. But the main thing for me is, I want to teach them they can do it. They can learn a new skill, and there's value in that, and that's why I compensate them. And it's a business expense, by the way, as a business owner. So if you do it the right way, it's still like a perfect legal business expense.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of benefits there beyond just the business side of it, but get your kids some experience in some different things and figure out, maybe they'll find an absolute joy for something that they didn't know they had, or a knack for it, or maybe they find out that they're absolutely terrible at something.
Yeah,
You know? and then they know that it's a path that they don't want to go down in their life because it's just not a good fit for them.
And that's what I do. Like I don't make them do stuff they don't like to do. No. If you have a talent, you have art talent and you want to do something and it's easy for you and you get it done in 5 seconds. Yes, I want to foster that. I want to make sure that you see it because especially kids, I got teenagers. It's all about self image, right? And they don't believe in themselves. So in a backward way, I'm teaching them they're very valuable in the skills that they have. And I ask my son, I ask all the time his opinion because he has a better artistic eye than I do. And then you go from there. And then you go, you know, there's plenty universities and colleges that offer interns, and they have to have that experience in order to transition to the civilian job, uh, to the job market. So it's a great way to start building your team and put them in trial because you want to cherry pick the one that's the best fit for you and your business and your cultures and make sure their values and their culture it aligns with yours
Yeah,
from
that's
day
really
one.
important. Values and cultures that align, and you got to have the trust, and then you got to find, like I was saying earlier, like somebody who's different than you. You may have to find somebody that's a totally different personality or way of getting things done that fits a particular role that you need because maybe it's not your strong suit as the owner, manager, whatever. So you got to you got to know those things. You got to know your people.
And you want that. You want diversity. You want people that have a different outlook and different skills because they can see all the things that you cannot see. You had those blinders, but you also need to learn how to manage the diversity um, because that's a real thing. There's a difference in culture, there's a difference in language, um, uh, personalities, um, but you can integrate it, you can align it. Um, it's
That should
just
also be said. You have to really know yourself too, and your strengths and weaknesses. Because I think like if I was a business owner and I had multiple employees, I would have to find somebody that could run an HR department and somebody who could be the person to fire people. Because I don't have that personality. I am a very caring, giving kind of person. I would probably look the other way on issues or give people an extra chance, even if it hurt the bottom line for my company. I would need somebody in a role. I'm self-aware enough to know I would need somebody in a role that could put their foot down and say, nope, enough is enough. We're going to fire this person and they're gone. Somebody with a more strict personality, you know. So you got to know yourself and your people.
yes, I think that's very important. And there's tools out there that you can learn how to do that. You can take personality quizzes. You can have that as part of your hiring practices. um have all this personality is one of the assessments they use.
That's a good one.
um because that way you kind of build a profile of your employee and you know where they need to develop because as they grow your company grows as well. So it's important, I think.
That's some good stuff, Niurka. You know what? I'm going to put together a resource for my podcast website, and I'm going to get some of the personality assessments and quizzes and stuff and get them up there. It's a good
Yeah,
idea. Yeah,
it's
it'd
a
be,
good
it'd be
idea.
helpful for people. So if anybody's listening to this, look for that here coming up pretty soon. So, along with entrepreneurship, since you've been on this journey for a while, is there anything on the journey that was like naturally easy for you? Like anything that's naturally easy, and then anything that you found that was like super difficult, easier or harder than you thought, I guess.
I think the hardest thing for me is to stay in one thing because I don't believe on limiting myself. um I'm very creative and I love that part of entrepreneurship. I love um being creative. I think that kind of fits my soul. um so when I'm in the creative phase, it helped me expand. It doesn't mean that I forget about everything else. It's just it give me the energy boost that I need, right? Um, so staying focused on one thing, um, maybe that's another thing for me. Um, and I look at it. I don't really multitask. What I do is I do vertical tasks. So everything that fills in the same pocket or similar pocket, if I can advance them at the same time. It's the same thing. So it takes the same kind of effort. I batch them together. And I get that over. And then if I had to leave it alone for a little while, I do that. Because, and that's the other thing. I had that luxury because first, I'm self funded. I don't have investors. I'm not looking for a handout because I need to be able to set my own pace. Once you have to um, respond to other people's investment in your business, you don't have that luxury anymore.
Yeah, I can't imagine that stress because I'm the same way as you.
Yeah, you don't have that luxury anymore. So I I try to set my own pace and you know and get things accomplished and just keep on trying, keep don't limit myself. Period. You know, and it doesn't mean I invest in my education. I'm always learning. I don't know how much I spent so far on self education. Um,
Yeah, remember it's one thing that people can't take away from you either. You know, that
yeah,
knowledge, all that education, everything you put in your brain.
yeah. I think this year has been a year of learning and growing. Um, so and I love it. I love every single thing. I can't wait where everything I'm building is it becomes apparent to everybody else. So that's the thing about entrepreneurs, right? You had the vision and then you have to make it happen. You are
Yeah, you do.
that's the definition of entrepreneur. You can see what nobody else can see.
That action step takes you from a dreamer to an
Yes.
entrepreneur.
And then you have to become a doer. You have to build it brick by brick. Uh, you know, little by little.
And the bricks can look different, like different businesses and things like that, different things that you got going on. One that you do is you got your own podcast. So what's the name of your podcast?
Funded Time Podcast.
And correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like because I've gotten to know you a little bit, you've got a little bit of a passion or an interest in teaching and just kind of education kind of thing. Has that influence? Is that true? Is there any influence there on why you started a podcast? Or
Yes, I actually fell into that. I was in a group and I saw I was surrounded by all these great men, right? And I see more than 500 people in there, and they all had a story that needed to be told, and they all were entrepreneurs. And I believe that's one of the best ways to learn how to become entrepreneurs, because and we all have our own books, right? We all write our own books, but some people are 10 pages ahead of you, and that's okay. You cannot be 10 pages ahead. You just started. You can be in your first page, but you can learn from those people that are 10 pages ahead of you. You can see what worked for them, what didn't work for them, what is a good fit for you. So that's what it's called fund this time, because it's their time, is them telling their story, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, with the idea of inspiring other entrepreneurs that maybe have an idea, they just don't have the how to make it happen, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
there's a lot of that when you
Yeah,
get in entrepreneurship. You don't know what you don't know.
yeah, you don't know what to ask.
Yeah, you
And
kind of fumble around in the dark sometimes until something just slaps you upside the head, and you're like, oh, that's how I can do that. I get it now.
yeah,
Now I can add another brick to the wall.
so and it's definitely, it has been an experience, and um and I'm actually in the process of transitioning uh to a TV show, hopefully. So we're still going to have the same format. It's just going to have the TV show aspect of it and go even more in depth. So it's
Awesome.
exciting.
Yeah, depth is something that's really needed because a lot of the things that you can consume out there on entrepreneurship is sometimes barely just kind of scratches the surface. It's not hard to find an ebook or something on YouTube or something that talks about it, but it doesn't really give you really anything super in depth sometimes. So more depth and more information is always good. And sometimes it's kind of like hidden, like people don't want to give too much out, or so. Sounds
I
like a great idea to have a TV show and go even more in depth about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I believe that's the missing piece, and entrepreneurship for anybody that's listening is one of the most important people in a society because they're the one that build of future. Um, so but there's a lot of misinformation or lack of education. Um, there's a lot of programs, but sometimes they all trying to sell you something, and they only send you one part.
With a
There's
huge promise somewhere in there.
yes,
This huge
oh,
get rich quick, or hey, you're going to make X amount of dollars in 6 months, and there's usually some sort of aspect to some of those things.
and that's the thing. Nothing that's worth while to have is going to be instant because you won't value it. Period. Part of the struggle on learning how to do things is what really make you care, make you build something that will stand the the time test, right? The test of time.
Yeah,
And there's really no in one single SOP, a standard operation of step by step of how to build a business. There's some steps, but not
yeah,
everything.
yeah. Yeah, that thinking about those companies with the crazy promises kind of leads me to my next thing to talk about here, which is real estate. And I'm sure you see it down there in your market as well because we're both realtors. You see these people or these organizations that come in and set up in a hotel and offer these huge seminars on buying houses with other people's money, no money down, quick flips, wholesaling. I'm not saying that some of those things don't work, but a lot of people that get in there just get suckered into the money, and I think they get left with really no actionable steps to really do anything. They get 15-20% of the recipe to do it, and the rest of it they got to kind of figure it out on their own. And then the guy goes on to the next town to his next seminar to collect money from all those people for teaching them the same exact thing. So not saying that some of those investment strategies might not work, but part of it is the scam of the education piece of it.
Yeah, they're making the money selling you the information on how to get the money.
Yeah,
Um, and there's some there that are valuable, but you need to understand that it's a real estate insurance. It can help you leverage business if you know what you're doing. It's like it goes back to education, having the right information. You need
and
to get
paying
that.
$800 or $1,000 or whatever they charge for those classes to only get 20% of that education on how to do it right isn't going to really put you on the path
No,
to getting where you need to go. They're
you
just
need to.
taking your money, and next thing you know, 6 months later, you haven't invested in anything with anybody else's money except
No,
for your own money on a worthless class.
you need to go to the source of the information. You need to always verify your sources. You know,
You need to
it's
talk to a realtor. You need to talk to a good mortgage lender, your local bank, whatever, and you need to figure those things out. Get that education that way.
yeah. Um, cause there's because it's simple. And the simple truth is there's a vetting process, right? Before they can get accredited, before they can they can be put out to the masses. There's a vetting process. Sometimes when you do go to one invest in one of these courses, there's nothing. They use somebody put it out there, and there was no structure. Maybe they have some valuable information, but there's no
And they found a
structure.
bunch of stuff on the internet, made some flyers, put $100 behind it on Facebook, and next thing they know, they got a room full of 100 people paying $200 a piece for the information that's useless to them.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it happens. And like I said, I don't want to badmouth those people on my podcast because I haven't been through any of those classes. Maybe some of that stuff works, but from the amount of interest there appears to be sometimes, there sure is a lack of investors using other people's money, at least in my market area. So it doesn't appear to have kicked off really in Peoria, Illinois too much. So, but on real estate, what made you get into real estate? You've been in the business for about 16 years now or so?
well, a little bit less than that because I got back in 2005, and then I went back active duty. So there was an interruption of service. But the main thing I got interested on real estate what was because of the potential, right? And I went to the class, um, and I find all this wealth of information on of all the potential way that you can use real estate, all the ways that you can get in trouble if you don't use it the right way. Um,
There's a lot of those.
yeah, and I like it. I think it's being used as a way to amass to create wealth for centuries, right? So it's very valid, but like I say, there's lots of way to get in trouble, and there's a lot of way to make money. You need to get educated, like everything.
Yeah, I mean, you can put money in the stock market. It can go up, it can go down. I mean, you might lose your money, but there's a lot of ways that you can get yourself in trouble when it comes to property, from loss due to natural disasters or other things, or buy a money pit. The good old movie Money Pit back there, back in the '80s. I think that was one of my favorite movies actually as a realtor. Um, because unfortunately, not to that extent, but it happens. You buy something that looks pretty good and it turns out to be a dump, and next thing you know, you're putting money in it left and right, and there goes any investment or wealth building. You've immediately kicked yourself, for purchasing it.
Because before you put your money into anything, you need to do your due diligence. You need to be able to manage risk, because there's always risk in any kind of investments that you do. How you manage that risk matters. Sometimes you can leverage that risk with insurance if you get the right one. Um,
With
but
the right amount
also,
of coverages. there's a lot of moving pieces there too. We could probably go on for days on a lot of these things, but that's
that
a good
that's
point.
that's another class, and there's ways to leverage that as well. But you need to be informed. But also, um, if you decided, and you want to invest in real estate, make sure that's something that give you a return. Make something that you can rent out, or that it will cover your basic need. But if you're not going to be living next door, that I don't recommend that in the first place, because you will never have a life. They will keep calling you every 5 minutes. Make sure you have a property manager. That's a business expense. Having a property, a rental property, is a business in itself. So manage it as a business. When you have to spend money, make sure you spend it. Because if save you 5 minutes, it save you getting 20 calls in the middle of the night because something is wrong in your property. Know the laws. What are your responsibilities as a landlord? What are your responsibilities as a tenant, as a homeowner? Know when you have to pay your taxes. And
Oh, definitely on the taxes, man.
yeah,
There's more than enough people that don't pay their taxes. See that all the time.
Yeah, and just because you're buying another state, the laws might be a little different. You're buying another country, the laws might be a little bit different. Just because your laws are a certain way in a global world right now, you need to make sure you know those laws as
Yeah,
well.
well, I'm in the state of Illinois, and our tax laws are really different when it comes to real estate. We pay ours in arrears, so we get people that move here, and you have to really explain it. And they just kind of look at you like a deer, in the headlights. Like, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, the taxes you pay in 2021 are the taxes you incurred in 2020. They're like, well, why would I pay them in 2020? I don't know, because the Illinois state legislature made that rule a long time ago. You incurred it then, you pay it this year. Then to complicate things, like the city of Peoria, that's right across the river from me, they put their garbage fees in there. Well, the garbage fees are not in arrears. So then you got to like break up the bill, and the prorations are all messed up, when you get to the closing table. So there's a lot of just interesting little moving parts that just in that one tax bill that you have to know and you have to understand. And if you move to a different area, even a different town, you don't even know sometimes.
Yes, and make sure that you have a property inspection, um, a reportable property inspector that check for all the little things that you miss, because you want to check your but you don't want to buy problems when you
Yeah.
invest into something.
It should also be noted, though, that they can't inspect everything, and
Right.
things can go bad weeks or months after something's inspected. So keep in mind, it's what they can see and touch and inspect at the day they inspected it. So that's something I have seen before. Like, well, yeah, the furnace is 30 years old. It worked just fine 2 months ago when you bought the house, and it went out today. Like, things happen. I mean, it's 30 years old. What do you expect? Sometimes it's unfortunate. There are home warranties out there that people can get too. It's another thing you can kind of protect yourself with. So, but
Yeah.
you have to read the fine print on that too. There is a lot of education that has to go into the whole process, but unfortunately, it's not done all that frequently sometimes, not
and
to the level that it should be.
and that's something that so that's why I say, if you're going to get a second property or rent a property, treat it as a business. If you're going to use a residential property, you still need to know what are your responsibilities, what are your all the legalities that you need to look at, um you know to make sure you manage it the proper way.
Mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
it's definitely a way, because you're not only making money and appreciation and depreciation. you know it's a it has a high return on your money, definitely, and you get to live it you know
Yeah. Yeah. Real estate is a wonderful way to increase your wealth when it comes to purchasing and investing, and it actually creates a great lifestyle too if you want to become a realtor. There's so much you can do, residential, commercial. You could work with investors. You could niche in working with veterans or foreclosures or whatever. There's a lot of different ways you can go, but the industry can be a little tough. So, um, since you became a realtor, what's one thing that jumps out in your mind that like you never thought you'd either have to deal with, or something that was totally kind of caught you off guard about the industry that was harder or different than you ever expected?
I think they it's very regulated industry, and you can get in trouble for a lot of little things. um but there's not enough investment in education for the realtors. There's a lot of expectations, but there's not a lot of investment on the realtors. There's a lot of fees. A lot of people are making a lot of money out of base of the realtors, but there's a missing piece, and I think that's education.
I
And
would totally agree with that. That's a good one. I like that, Niurka.
yes,
That's
and and you think like like veterans. Most veterans, the first thing they want to do is use the BI loan, and that's it. a very smart thing to do, and to leverage that, especially you spend 20 years in the military, you can build a nest that way. Um, just thinking you buy multifamily in a period of 10 years, how many multifamilies can you have using the VA loan? Um,
Absolutely. That is the way to go, and that's underutilized in my opinion. Now, the VA loan in most cases is going to be the best route to go. It may not in some particular cases for whatever reason, but if you can get into a multifamily property,
mhm.
preferably 3 or 4 units, and you can cover most of your mortgage with the rent from 1 or 2, then you've got income coming in.
Yes.
I mean, it's a no brainer. Now you have to want to be able to live with 2 or 3 other families, people around you. There's
But
some drawbacks there too. Not everybody wants to live like in that apartment style life, but it's a
you
way
have
to build that income, and then you can invest into another one a couple years down the road, and another and another and another. Next thing you know, you got 20, 30 different apartment buildings across the city, and you're bringing in plenty enough income to pay for your own mortgage, in your own single family home, whatever you want to do. So,
and the thing I will say about that is, you know, you only have to do it 1 year, right? You only have to live next to your renters 1 year, and then you can move to another property and do it all over again. But also, a way to manage that is don't tell nobody that you're the owner, because everybody will come knocking
yeah,
at your door.
yeah, that's where that property management company comes in. Because yeah, don't tell anybody that.
Don't
Because I mean,
tell.
they're not the people that rent aren't going to go check. They're not going to really particularly care or notice. Just mind your own business. Don't really talk to anybody. Let it be. I guess one difficulty counter argument I'd have on there is, if you're in a duplex or something like that, it's not like you can call in a noise complaint to your property manager because then they're going to know it's you. But then I guess you've got the power to tell them that you're not going to really renew the lease at the end either. So, I guess you've got some power both ways. But that is a good one. Hire somebody else to manage it so you don't have to do it. Don't let anybody know who you are, that you're the owner.
And
Live
what's
there, whatever, however long you want, and bounce to the next place.
and if the noise complaint is a big one, why you don't invest in some soundproof walls? Now you reduce the
Yeah,
noise.
yeah. No, the goal is to get somebody in there as a good tenant that's not going to trash the place or have noise complaints. But we all know that's not a reality sometimes. About 20% of the time you might get a good tenant. That unfortunately that's what I tell my clients all the time when they're looking at investment property. You're going to have a lot more bad tenants than you are good. You're going to live a lot more people that are going to leave you messes or things are going to get broken and they're not going to tell you than you are people who are going to pick up the phone and tell you when something's wrong, that are going to pay on time, leave the place clean when they leave. It just is what it is. So you just have to be willing to accept that you're going to walk into some messes sometimes when somebody leaves.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to your imagination what those messes can be. We both know. Um, look at the show Hoarders and stuff like that. That might give you an idea of some of the stuff you can walk into sometimes. But there's single family homes that people own that they do that too. So don't get me wrong. Um, so on real estate, we'll flip this to your local area here. You're in the Miami area. Let's just say somebody who's listening is thinking about moving to Florida. Why should they move to Miami? Give us a good pitch for the city there.
Well, a big draw is the Miami lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to do here. Of
And
course,
you
you
got
can
palm
go
trees in
to,
your backyard.
yeah, that's everywhere. Uh, you can go to the beach anytime. Traffic is a pain. Um, but you can get in your car and you can go down to the Keys, or you can go up to the Orlando anytime that you want to, and all the cities in between. Um, there's a lot of sports here. I think we're only missing one stadium to have a niche on that. Um, there's before COVID hit, there was like 10,000 people coming in every day. Because there's a lot of people that come from South America, um, and even people that leave, they're still coming. So the culture is very rich, very diverse. A couple of years ago, I think it was 154 different cultures in here in Miami alone. Uh, so
That's
you
a
can
lot of
find,
diversity right there. That's awesome.
yes, that it's very rich. Um, so you can find Russians, Italian, Irish, Cuban, a lot of those. um, so Americans, there's a lot. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of theaters. There's a lot of entertainment. So it's whatever your budget is and whatever is your taste. Like it's pretty much a little bit for everybody.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about that, and what would you say your typical price point would be in that area, just out of curiosity, for a 3 bedroom, 2 bath?
Well, right now the prices are going up, so I don't think
That's
you
good for
can probably.
sellers.
Yeah, he just went up 15% again. So last time I checked, I think the average was about 400 now. Like like 350 maybe you can find something very limited. Uh, so the prices are high, but the appreciation is really high. Yeah, in a normal year, the appreciation goes up um really quick. So if you buy a property, you will see the appreciation coming. Like my brother lives in North Carolina, his appreciation doesn't go up barely in 10 years. Where here every year it will go up. It will go up.
Yeah, where I'm at, it's pretty steady, depending on where you're at. There's a couple of places where it's been pretty flat. Um, not too many places where it's depreciated in value, but we got certain places maybe 3-4%. Typical, maybe steady growth around here is 1%. So it doesn't grow super fast, but our local price point, typical price point would be about 125,000. So definitely
Well,
looks a lot more attractive there. But we don't have palm trees and we don't have the ocean nearby. But we are uniquely sandwiched between St. Louis and Chicago, so we got that.
yeah, that's good. Well, we got when I joined the army, I think prices were like in the 98,000. Like you can find a really nice house for like 200,000. Now those same house that were 98,000, you're not going to find it for less than 400. So
Wow.
yeah, and that's less than what 25 years. So the appreciation is skyrocket, and
Yeah.
a lot of is there's a lot of tourists that come here and they buy here. Um, there's a lot of people there's a lot of snowbirds that come um to Florida,
I know
and
you
they
get a
have
lot of them from my area, that's for sure.
yeah
A lot of people from my area go to Texas, Arizona, and Florida. I mean, that's pretty common, everywhere. But I know a handful of people that are in Florida at least 6 months out of the year.
yeah. Well, that's why we had that movie. Welcome to Miami.
Yeah. Well, you know, that palm trees branches hanging behind is pretty inviting. Almost makes me want to hop on a plane. Almost. If there was no COVID, it'd be a good spot to come visit. But um, I put that on my bucket list. I told you earlier I was planning a
Yeah.
trip to Disney this last summer, but um, yeah, Florida sounds really nice, especially as it's bitterly cold up here. Um,
Yeah.
but it's Illinois for you, so we get all 4 seasons in a week if we're sometimes in a day.
Well, yeah. I miss those. We
You
we
have a
only
heck
got
of a
like
lot easier job selling your city than I do mine.
I got we got like 2 seasons. Um, so it's about summer and 10 days of winter. That's it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say summer and hurricane.
So that's part of the summer. That's part of the
That's
summer.
part of the summer. Okay.
That's when
It's a,
people move out.
yeah, no, I you see, I think about that and I'm like, man, there's no way. Like, I guess I'd much rather take my chances with tornadoes up here. Um, but it's all what you're used to. So
You get lucky.
it is what it is.
I don't think we have a real good hurricane in the last 5 years, 3 years. So
That's good.
you get used to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure you do. And I know everybody's got their processes down. But at least you get some time to prepare for them. Whereas tornadoes, they're obviously a lot smaller,
What
and even more destructive. But you've got to be right in the path. And
and that's the thing. It doesn't it surprised me. Like every time there's a hurricane, you see people going crazy in the street. Oh my God, the world's gonna die. But you had the whole year to prepare. You just have emergency kit. Especially the prices are going to go up because everything is going up at that time. The
I,
water.
I
Just
think if
have
it was me,
emergency
if
kit.
I lived down there, I mean, I know you guys board up your windows and stuff like that. I would probably have all that wood sitting in a shed or something like that. I
Yeah.
would want to have all that stuff prepared where all I got to do is pull it out and attach it. Just
No,
be ready to go.
we got the windows, the impact windows, and then we got the protector, and we just have to pull the protectors and simple have it ready. That
Do a lot
way
of people have generators and stuff like that for power outages or?
yes, but you have to be very careful with those. Don't bring it inside your house because next thing you know,
Yeah,
everybody's sleeping forever.
good point.
Um,
Yeah.
and make sure to check it before because I know we have one. It probably hasn't been checked in 5 years. So, yeah, make sure you check that before you need it.
Yeah, I would say it's something that probably should be checked every year. Have somebody come out and give it a check, fire it up, whatever. Make sure it's running a couple months
Yeah,
before the season in case you need a part or something like that and it has to be ordered. You know,
yeah,
just like your furnace and your air conditioner and stuff like that should be checked on a regular basis. I'll pound the table for those industries because they really should, but people don't get them checked as much as they should.
and your roof has to be auto code, and because that's the first thing that it will go out, it will fly away from you. So make sure you have a good roof at least every 10 years. Uh, so you don't get those big holes in your middle of the living room.
Are people switching to metal roofs at all down there? Has that had is it a
Some people
trend? Has it
do.
had any impact?
Some people do, but it gets hot here, so um, you know, I know a lot of people transitioning to solar panels, because that's like the most utilized part of your roof or your house, right? It's
Oh
the
yeah,
roof. Uh, of course, the prices are still a little expensive, but
I think the electric companies want to keep it that way. Keep
mhm,
more people from getting it because I would have some solar panels on my house if it was more cost effective. So,
yeah.
but with the real estate, I know you're a member of the Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals. What can you tell us about that for anybody who's looking to get into real estate or?
Well, I tell you something. That was one of the organizations that as soon as I got my license again, I joined it. Because of what they represent and what they do for veterans. Um, so it's called. They have several programs. Where they help a veteran get into a house, mortgage free. They also come and educate veterans on how to use the VA loan. You actually get as a realtor, you don't only get the membership, you also can get certified as a mentor and go help other people to understand the ins and out of VA loan. And they have people that specialize it. They most of them are veterans, so they know what they're talking about, and they're national. Now that I know, they have like three different programs. The one for the housing, they have for education, and the whole membership.
Awesome. Yeah, something I had seen before, but I am not a member, and I've thought about it, but there's no chapter in my area. We were talking before we did the show, and if I was gonna have one in my area, I'd have to set up a whole chapter and all that stuff. So I hadn't made up my mind if I was gonna go down that path. We don't have a whole lot of realtors here locally in my area, about 750. So there's only about 5 or 6 of us that are vets that I'm aware of. So if we set up a chapter, it'd be all on our backs. So something I might have to join a chapter farther away or something like that. So, um, but speaking of vets and real estate and stuff like that, before we get to the final 3 questions I asked everybody, what kind of advice would you have for speaking of the VA loan or buying a home, selling a home, whatever? What's your advice for vets? Couple of good nuggets for them to take away.
Utilize it. Start early. Start when you're getting paid for housing. Um, you know, just imagine the most soldiers that spend about 3 to 5 years in a duty station. That's depending on the area, 3 to 5 years that you're building a nest egg. And even if it doesn't go as much in appreciation, that's money that you didn't throw away. You rent it out, the money's gone. But you putting that in your principal. My brother is in the military as well. He has 2 houses with 20 years of service. Um, because he was a station and he will buy. He went to Fort Hood. He bought another house there, and then he sold it. But even if you sell it later, that's money that you didn't have before. Um, if you don't want to deal with um the property management and the headache having that, just go through the process and sell it and use that money to invest in a new property. You know.
Yeah, that's a great one. This got me thinking, and makes me wish I would have used my VA loan when I was in and bought a multifamily property that I could have lived there, and that'd have been a win-win. Even making money on the
I,
side.
I wish I had that opportunity. I was stationed most of the time overseas, so I didn't have that opportunity because you had to leave for a year, and in order to be able to use the VA benefits, and they never gave me that opportunity. So I didn't have, so I wish I would have had that because I probably would have 10 houses by now. Um, because that's the other thing, when you sell the house, you invest whatever equity you have after you sell everything in another house. You just don't pay taxes. You
Yeah.
just build
Yeah,
another nest
don't
egg.
take that money and do anything else but buy another property with it.
No, just put it in another property. You had to live somewhere anyway. Why don't put it in another property? And now you gotta keep doing it. And that's only you don't want to deal with another property and tenants and everything. And if you do have tenants, if you end up having more than one property, just make sure you do your due diligence. You put the personnel that you need. Make sure you have property management, but not only property management. You want that buffer, so you want um, the warranty, homeowner warranty association, to make sure that when something breaks down, somebody go inspect it before you have to pay, and it's a real expense. It's not somebody trying to pull something over you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any
Yeah.
other nuggets of information, helpful tips?
Um. Yeah, I think get educated and use the benefits that you have in the best way, so um you can get investment out of it. It's a totally it's a totally different thing to come out of the military 20 years after, uh with something to fall back, than having a property, having some money saved in the bank, than you trying to transition, trying to figure it out, and then you have to worry about money because nobody's paying you housing anymore. You have to
Yeah.
pay that now.
Yeah, it's not just housing that ends up in your lap too. It's it's health insurance, life insurance. I mean, all those different things that start
That you didn't
hitting your
deal with
pocketbook
before.
immediately.
Yeah. So, and it's something that you can use to leverage your personal life, your business life. It's just something. Is get
Yeah,
financially educated.
absolutely. It gives you a place to live and gives you an asset that's paying you money. So it takes some of that financial burden of paying for those other bills, away from you,
Hmm.
and pays for the property even faster, or puts money in your pocket to live off of, whatever, help that transition. So good way of going about things. So last three questions I've got here for you, Niurka, I ask everybody who's a vet. So first one I'll ask is, what advice would you give to somebody who's looking to transition out, sometime soon?
Plug in. Um, find the resources that are available to you. Start early. There's transitioning programs that they're coming up now that are really good. Um, start plugging in them early. Find your benefits. Have a plan. The same way that you live your military lifestyle, you always have a plan. Have a plan to when you get out. So, because you still had to cope with the loss. Um, most military has PTSD. Then you had to deal with your family because even if you deal with your family before, it was part time. The military took a huge chunk of your life, but now you're gonna be full time in the house. They're not used to it. You're not used to it. Uh, so that is a transition on itself. So yeah, have a plan. Have a plan for all of that.
That is a good one. So what about any young person, in high school or in college right now that's, kicking the tires on joining? What kind of advice would you give them?
That they make sure. Um, I definitely would recommend to be informed. So don't let nobody sell you a pipe, right? Uh, a dream pipe. Make sure that you know what you're supposed to expect. That you go into a job or MOS. That is something that you see yourself in the future doing. However much time you spend in the military, make it count. You
Yeah, it's
know,
not 4 years of your life to go party. You
no,
need to look at it as a career, a stepping stone, a way to get education and network and meet other people, and come out on the other end
yeah,
a better, stronger person, more capable of adapting to the world.
yeah, and even if you go in and maybe you pick something that you saw you like and you end up not liking it as much, um, you can always transition to another thing. But you already went with the plan. Like, um, my niece husband, he wants to be a pilot, so he just joined it, and he couldn't get into the pilot school fast enough, so he went as a mechanic to fix helicopters. That's what he wants to do. He wants to fly the helicopters. So now he knows how to fix the helicopter. He's gonna be flying, and now he's going to the academy to learn how to be a pilot. He had a plan,
There you
and
go.
he's only 18 years old. So
That's a lot of knowledge that you can pick up. That I definitely not a pilot, but I don't know that the pilots know all that. They might know what some of those parts are, but I'd give them more knowledge about exactly what they are, what they do, and why it's important, and how to fix them and stuff like that. So that's good. It's good advice of kind of have knowing what you're getting into. Last
yeah,
question I got for you. I have a feeling I might know the answer already, but are there any veteran social groups or clubs or anything like that that you want to give a shout out? One, two, three of them, whatever, that you have found helpful or useful, or you think that people should look at joining?
I see there are a lot of groups out there that do a lot of great. They're doing amazing things. I definitely, as a realtor, I will call out Barrett because I think they're doing. Um, it's an excellent program. They don't have enough uh, market presence. But I definitely, you want to be entrepreneur. I would look up IBMF, the Betpreneur Tribe. If you're on Facebook, um, I will look into Bunker Labs. I will look into Wonder Warrior. If you want to find something else to do um, with your family, and they have a lot of recreational. But the missing piece when you everybody transition is that community that you build when you're in the military, and plugging all these resources and all these organizations help you kind of build a new one. So that's very important.
That is
Fun.
vitally important. I like that, and I've heard that. I'm starting to hear that more and more often, and I think that's not said enough. That
Yeah.
that structure, that group mentality, it's just gone. When you're out, you're out. Honestly, the unit that you're leaving behind isn't going to pay attention to you. You're done. You're gone. They don't really care about you anymore. So now you have to make your own path in life. And it's incredibly helpful to connect with fellow vets in one way, shape, or form. Get that group, find out who that group is, and become a part of it. Let them be your new group, your new group.
And it takes time because there's a lot of distractions when you're becoming a civilian. You don't fit in with the attitude of the military because they look at you like, oh, you're trying to tell me what to do. Um, and you don't fit in with the civilians because they're like, you crazy, you need to slow down. But the veterans, most of them being in the same place that you have been. So there's a commonality. And once you build that trust, they will welcome you. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, we are a very small percentage of the population of the United States that's unfortunately, like you say, kind of in that no man's land. You don't fit in the civilian world, you don't fit in the military world. You've got some connections in your life to both, but that's not who you are. You're kind of I hate to say it, but it has been. You're no longer in. You're not doing all the fun, cool stuff anymore. Now you're just an old, broken down, hobbling around vet. Most of us that way anyway. We don't come out without a few bumps and bruises along the way. But
yeah,
yeah, you got to find your own path. You never know when that's going to hit you. Ironically, I'm wearing my Greater Peoria Honor Flight shirt right now. That's the organization that I found by some odd chance that gave me that group. They gave me that new close group of friends. Not all of them are vets, but they're almost like a family to me now. And this year's been hard not being able to have any missions flying to DC, but it's that's what helped me through transition, honestly. And it took, I think, 3 years after I got out before I found them. So eventually you find your group.
and yeah, and most of us, we done with the military. Oh my God, it's over. Finally, need a break. But then you hit that period where you miss it because it has been your life for how many years. So yeah, you need to build that community. You need to find, and sometimes maybe you don't have a base around you. Maybe you don't have that many veterans around you. Go to a conference. Um, and my phone's going to die, but go to go to a conference and plug in. There's like, I think there's like 20 right now every year.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of ways, from conferences to social groups online to, going down to your local VFW, American Legion post, whatever. Find them. They're out there. It's really not
yeah,
hard to find groups of vets. So just go find one and connect. And we'll go ahead and wrap this up since your phone's about to die,
yeah,
and be wrapping it up anyway. But Niurka, thanks so much for being on the podcast. That was awesome. Look forward to seeing you next week. on the
Sure,
Warrior Council. All righty.
all right.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Have a
Thank you
good
for
one.
having me on your show.